Okay, welcome to the second block of the French defense with the center method. We are going to look at the Tarrasch variation. It's when white plays knight d2. And if one could survive the advanced variation without knowing almost no theory at all, the Tarrasch variation demands that you know some positions, but if you understand what's going on, you will be able to find the moves yourself, most of them anyway. Anyway, black can play c5, he can take on e4, but I recommend knight f6. The purpose of this move is to force the pawn to e5, and now we can happily attack it with f6, and we will play c5. So we will basically follow the same concept as in advanced variation. We want these pawns to go forward, and then we welcome them with warm gloves. The normal move to play here is bishop d3. It's an excellent square for the bishop. And white plays c5. Black plays c5. Actually, sometimes it happens that white goes to e2, and then of course you just take the bishop. But it's very rare. c3, of course. White keeps his center intact and gives the bishop a little space. c2. Knight here. And now the normal move to play is to go with the knight to e2. If you just look at it optically for the first time in your life, look at those two knights on d2 and e2. You might think that it looks very, very strange, because normally one would like to develop the knight to f3 with one move, but the problem is we have no good squares for the knight on d2. Of course, many players play this with white. They want to place the knight on b3. I don't like the square b3 for a knight. Anyway, but Kasparov played it in a rapid game against Bareyev, so it has some value. But the idea of playing knight d2 is that the knight is going to f3, and sooner or later black will take on d4, and after that the other knight goes to c3. So after some fuss, the knights are reaching their ideal positions. That's the point. Okay, what is black going to do? Actually, we would like to play f6 in order to attack white's center, but there is a big drawback with this line, and it's very interesting. Paul Keres, the magnificent Estonian player who played with such a nice air, he was also a very good theoretician. He wrote an excellent book about the French defense. It was, I think, 1957, and actually in that time you only knew about this way of handling the position. So theory has made big leaps, but not only theory, also understanding about the values of the pieces. By this mutual chess is like a science, it goes forward all the time. We learn more about the value of a pawn, the value of an exchange sacrifice. After f6, white can play knight f4, threatening the pawn on e6 and threatening queen h5 check. White has the better game. So one cannot play f6. In Keren's book, I think Keren recommended this and said that white is going to have a little better game. And we agree, we don't want to play like this with black. That's horrible. So we have to take here first. After knight d2, take on d4. White, of course, take with a pawn. And then we play f6. The idea is that black takes on f6 and then we take back with a knight. But, as I told you in the chapter about advanced variation, the most important factor in chess is the safety of the king. So, what happens if white attacks the king? He's now threatening queen h5, and we do not want to play queen e7. How can we protect the e6 square? And this move, knight takes d4, was not obvious for the players in the 40s or the 50s. It was detected later. Because in that time, one simply thought it's bad, because white wins an exchange by playing a check here, king e7, only move. And now white should play e takes f6. If one plays knight g6 first, takes, and take on f6, then black can, if he wishes, take with the king instead. He gets an extra option, which one does not want to give. Therefore, you take with the pawn immediately, forcing black to take with a knight, and then you play knight g6 check. Black must take. White takes on h8, and now black plays king f7. This was the position. I don't know if they saw it, they didn't write about it, but somehow one thought that this is simply good for white. But as Bronstein says, I sacrifice an exchange in order to control the center. If his words has some kind of value, then this must be a good exchange sacrifice. Not giving black an advantage, but giving black decent play. With king f7, we prevent moves like knight f3 because of bishop b4 check and the queen hangs. So white almost always play queen h4. It's the best move. He's threatening the knight, so black protects it with e5, and on the same time he can develop his bishop. Now white has to make a choice. He wants to move his knight, but where to go? If he goes to b3, black will take, and we will have a similar game as in our main game, but it will be slightly inferior because white has less control over the center. So time has given that knight f3 is a better move. Black takes, he has to do it, he has no choice. Okay, white pawn structure is ugly, but now it is about preventing black center to take over. You don't want to let these pawns just to roll over him like nothing. So this pawn limits the movement of the e5 pawn. Black develops his bishop freely to f5, and at the same time he's threatening the bishop on d3, and white practically has only one move. Take, take. And now the normal thing to do here is to develop the bishop to g5. If white, he would like to play something like, sometimes maybe here, to threat, to take here if pawn takes back, some kind of checks or something, but normally white he can't create so much threats against black's king in this position. So, but somehow he has to try. Black's weaknesses are on the white squares. So if he could attack here somehow, it would be good. But it's not so easy. After bishop g5, the best move for black is rook c8. Simple and strong. If one plays the check here instead, then one plays king f1, and if one plays a new check, one simply plays king g2, and you don't want to take here because then you let the rook come into your position and white gets unnecessary complications. So it's better to let white work for getting his rooks connected. That is what white wants. Rook c8. In this game, my opponent, he did not know more theory than this, and I would like to ask you to try to remember the position up to this point and maybe some more moves. The normal move is castle, as Timman played against Morozevich, and here Morozevich played rook c4. A slight inaccuracy. The point of rook c4 is, of course, that it looks very active. It threatens the queen, but the drawback is that the queen wants to be on a white square anyway, so why help him to attack the f5 square? Actually, I think rook c2 is a better move. Here black are doing something real. He attacks b2 and keep an eye on f2 in case he can play maybe bishop c5, queen b6 or something like that. Probably not, but anyway, he keeps white a little bit more busy. And here rook queen a4 looks good, harassing the rook. And if one analyzes a bit further,